On February 4th, 2016, Pew Research Center released a study that showed that 91% of American adults have learned something about the upcoming election in November. And of that 91%, 61% have learned this information from U.S. news sources. Today, I will be persuading you to be more cautious when receiving information from these U.S. news sources. Since I was a little girl, I can remember that my family has always been well informed and well educated about politics, whether it be local, state, or national. They've just always known and been in the know about it, and they pushed me to do the same and to form my own opinions about politicians and politics in general and the issues that face today. And since I was able to do so, I noticed some things, and I noticed an inconsistency among news sources. Several different news sources would report the same story. They would all have their own twist on the story, and it would become very inconsistent. And I would also notice blatant favoritism shared over the air. And it made me very angry, and it made me ask, why are they doing this, and why is no one doing anything about it? So, with that being said, today we will examine the problem of U.S. news sources reporting biased political information to the American citizens and why this is wrong. I'll also propose a solution and the advantages of that solution. So first, let's look at the problem itself, and that is news sources reporting biased political information. So U.S. news sources are supposed to present factual, trustworthy, non-manipulative, non-biased information. And all sides need to be held accountable to do so. And both the conservative and the liberal side taint information on a daily basis. Rebecca Rifkin of Gallup.com did a study, and it showed that the trustworthiness of American news sources has dropped to an all-time low of 40%. So that means that 60% of Americans do not trust our own news sources. In the first study that I told you about, it said that 61% of Americans gain information from these U.S. news sources that they don't trust. So, I'll ask the question, who's going to report neutral information? And that's the problem. There is no one reporting neutral information. And if we want to compare all the news sources, CNN would be the most trusted, but Americans say that only 54% trust CNN. So that's not a lot. It should be a whole lot more than that. Just Facts, which is a nonprofit research and educational institute, did a survey in 2013. It was a nationwide survey that included active voters and people who voted in elections that they were eligible to vote in. And they concocted a test that consisted of 20 true and false questions, and each question had to do with some sort of public policy and an up-to-date public policy. And this makes me so angry, but only 39% of those people that did the test could answer the questions correctly. That makes me extremely angry. These are active voters, people who should know and should be able to answer 100% of the questions correctly. And in that research, they broke it down into each party, and it showed that Democrats could only answer 30% of the questions correctly. Republicans could answer 45% correctly, so that's a 15% increase. Good job, conservative news sources. Third party voters could only answer 41% correctly, and undecided voters could only answer 39% correctly. So whether you like it or not, whether you care or not, it's your responsibility to be informed about politics and what's going on in our world, and you should make an effort to be informed. So now that we've talked about the problem, let's talk about a possible solution. I think that we should hold news sources accountable for reporting bogus information. No one is doing that. They're just letting news sources do whatever they want. So if my plan is enacted, it would cause them to have to filter sources. A lot of times, news sources will just pick from surveys and experts who side with their opinion. But if we hold news sources accountable to filtering their sources, they'll have to find neutral information. And I think that they should also ask similar questions to both parties. Today, there's a lot of interviews going on with Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, And what you'll see a lot of is that the liberal media is setting Hillary Clinton up for success in these interviews, and they're blasting Donald Trump in their interviews. And so if we hold news sources accountable for the information that they report, they would have to ask similar questions to both parties to make it a fair interview. So although this solution seems like it's impossible to fix, I think that it's better to fight it than it just to be ignored. Susan Delgado, she's an author, and she writes about how to deal with stress and things of that nature. She said this quote, "If you choose to not deal with an issue, then you give up your right of the control over the issue, and it will select the path of least resistance." So now that we've looked at the problem, we can imagine the future that America has if we don't solve it. And we've got to fight it, because like Susan said, if we don't, then it'll take the path of least resistance. So if this issue is unsolved, more voters will be misinformed, and that is a disservice to the generations to come, and government will gain complete control over our news media. So with my solution, it'll make news sources think twice before they report on opinion rather than fact. And you can make a difference. I know that it's intimidating, but don't be intimidating. You do have a voice. And although you are one voice, you should join forces with people who have the same morals and agree with the same things that you believe so that you guys can make a difference. So since we have looked at what the future may hold if we don't hold news sources accountable, let's take personal action in stopping this disservice and make it our job to solve this issue. So today we have examined the problem of U.S. news sources reporting biased information. We've talked about why it's wrong, and I've proposed a solution to this problem and the advantages to this solution. So now that we've talked about it, each of us can take careful consideration when receiving information from U.S. news sources. We should be well read and not just take information that we learn from news sources. And lastly, don't take the media's word for it. Do your own research.